Hello and welcome to this beginner-friendly Arena Fast Castle guide. Before jumping into the build order, I want to highlight some of the key features of this build which might help differentiate it a bit from some of the other guides which are out there. By day, I lecture maths in a university, so I spend a lot of my time thinking about how I can break down complex topics into simpler ideas so that my students have the best chance of understanding them. I've tried to apply the same principles when designing this build order. AOE2 is a fast-paced game, and it's easy to become completely overwhelmed with all the actions you need to perform. I've tried my best to design this guide to minimise the amount of actions required and to reduce the cognitive load required to successfully execute it. Here's a few features of the build which will help achieve this. First, no deer luring is required. Whether you have chicken or deer on your map, we will take them long distance from the town centre. Second, almost no hotkeys are required. The only hotkey I used when recording this build was for Q Villager in the town centre. In my opinion, this is the most important hotkey in the game, and even if you're a beginner, it is definitely worth learning how to use this. Third, I have blocked together actions wherever possible. Aside from our two immediate houses, we will need to build two additional houses during Dark Age. If we build these two houses at the same time, then this is only one action we need to remember to perform. If we build the houses at two separate times, then that is two actions we need to remember. And of course, the more things we need to remember, the harder the build will be to execute. I've applied this principle throughout the build. We will finish all 8 sheep before we take any boar, as opposed to taking some sheep, going to boar, then going back to sheep. Each time we switch the task of villagers, this is an action we need to perform, so this again will save us an action. All these saved actions really do add up, and they make the build much easier to execute. Finally, I've put a lot of thought into the boar lure timings. This is a difficult task for many players, and you will want to have your attention focused solely on the lure. This build brings in the second boar after we have already clicked Feudal Age, so no new villagers will be coming out of the town centre, and all other aspects of our economy are already set up. So we can provide our full and undivided attention to the boar lure, which will minimise the chance of something going wrong. Without further ado, let's jump into the build order. The very first thing we should do is queue a villager in the town centre. Then we build 2 houses and work our way up to 6 villagers on sheep. I wanted to make this build as general as possible, so I've carried it out with the Magyars, a civilization with no economy bonuses. If your civilization does have an economy bonus, you should find the build even easier to pull off, and you'll be floating a few more resources when we reach Castle Age. After the first 6 villagers go to sheep, we send the next 4 to berries. One of these villagers should build 2 houses along the way. Most build orders go to wood and build a lumber camp at this point, but going to berries first has its advantages. If we want to get up to Castle Age quickly, we need a lot of food. 500 for Feudal Age, 800 for Castle Age, and 1100 for the 22 villagers we queue up in this build. Farms cost a lot of wood, so it is essential to extract as much food as we can from the natural resources on the map. Going to berries before wood means that we will have gathered roughly 200 more food from the berries by the time we click Castle Age. This makes a huge difference in having enough food in the bank to be able to make that click. After we have sent 4 to berries, set your gather point to whichever straggler tree is closest to your town centre. The next 5 villagers will go here. When your villagers finish this tree, you will have gathered exactly 100 wood, which we will then use to build a lumber camp. Throughout all this, we should be feeding in our sheep one at a time to our 6 villagers under the town centre. In this build, we will have exactly 1 animal under the town centre at all times. This minimises decay and again fits in with the general theme of trying to extract as much food as we possibly can from the map's natural food resources. We will use all 8 of our sheep before we lure in the first boar. Now, here comes the most difficult part of the build. There's several actions we need to carry out in short succession, so it might take some practice to get this right. Keep a sharp eye out for when the 5th villager reaches the straggler tree. Immediately change your town centre gather point to the sheep. Then, select the 5 villagers on the straggler tree and shift queue them onto a tree on your desired wood line. This makes the villagers walk in the right direction after they finish the straggler. Command the villagers to build a lumber camp, then immediately grab 4 villagers from under the town centre and send them out to long distance gather your chicken or deer, whichever you have on the map. If you have deer, all 4 villagers should work on the same deer. It is worthwhile to shift queue the order in which they take the deer, otherwise the villagers might split up after the first trip. If you have chicken, like I have here, you should split the 4 villagers into 2 groups of 2. Again, shift queuing is essential. You should shift queue 1 pair of the villagers through 3 or 4 chickens, and the other pair through the remaining 3 or 4 chickens. Keep sending new villagers to town centre food until we have 8 villagers there. It's around now that we will run out of sheep, so this means it is time to lure our first boar. I've allowed for a bit of inefficiency in this build, because let's face it, it's a rare occasion that everything goes perfectly to plan. Here, I lured the first boar a bit late, so the villagers were idle under the town centre for a bit. The final 2 villagers of Dark Age will go to gold, with the first building a mining camp. Since villagers can carry 35 food from a boar before dropping off, this means a lot of food can end up stuck in villager hands as opposed to our stockpile. We'll need to force drop the food under the town centre to hit the 500 food required to click feudal age. I'd recommend doing this about halfway through the creation of the final villager. We need to bring in the second boar a short while after we click up. Every other aspect of our economy will be ticking over nicely, so you can provide your full undivided attention to the boar lure. Once the second boar is in, I'd like to shift queue these villagers to a straggler tree. They won't all stay there in the long run, but it prevents them from going idle after finishing the boar. We'll add 2 more villagers in feudal age, both going to gold. The town centre gather point will already be set to gold, so we won't need to make any adjustments. Since we're at 24 of 25 population, we should build a house on the way up. One of the tighter parts of the build order is reaching the 325 wood required to build a market and blacksmith upon hitting feudal age. So make sure you build this house with a berry villager instead of a wood villager. Once we hit feudal age, immediately grab 3 villagers from your wood line and task 2 of them to build a market and 1 of them to build a blacksmith. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't using hotkeys, so it took me a good bit of clicking to get these buildings placed. I was worried they wouldn't come up in time, so I sent a second villager to the blacksmith. This is a nice little trick you can use whenever you feel like you're a bit slow to get your buildings placed. As soon as they're completed, we can click Castle Age in our town centre. On the way up, we should move some straggler tree villagers over to the lumber camp so that we have 10 on the main wood line. Research double bit axe as soon as you have 100 food, and then horse collar once you've gathered an additional 75. We will need to make some adaptations based on the number of chickens or deer on your map. If you only have 6 chicken or 3 deer, you will finish the hunt around the time that you clicked Castle Age. In this situation, you can initially send them to straggler trees, but then drop around 3 farms on the way up to Castle Age. Here, with 8 chickens, I didn't need to drop any farms and had these villagers work on stragglers until I hit Castle Age. In this video, I'm showcasing a 3 town centre boom. We will be a bit tight on the food required to keep all 3 pumping out villagers, so I recommend buying 100 food from the market whenever we have enough gold to do so. Initially, we pay 150 gold for 100 food, which might feel like it's not such good value for money. However, being the maths lover that I am, I decided to do a quick analysis on why buying food is actually a very efficient choice at this point in the game. I'll explain this in detail after we finish the main build. Anyway, we've now reached Castle Age and have the wood required to drop 2 additional TCs. Your 4 berry villagers should finish the berries just before we reach Castle Age, and they can be used to drop 1 town centre. For the other one, I'd recommend grabbing 4 villagers from straggler trees. At this point, our attention should turn to creating as many farms as we can as soon as we can. Any villagers still on straggler trees should drop a farm as soon as 60 wood is available. Before the town centres are completed, we'll have gathered enough gold to buy another 100 food from the market. This will be a good idea to give us a bit of buffer so we can have those TCs pumping as soon as they're created. If possible, both our new TCs should set their rally point to a nearby wood line. We should keep a close eye on our wood count, and every time we see it hit 60, we should grab a villager and drop a farm. In this demonstration, I've ended up with a small bit of idle TC time, which isn't ideal, but also isn't the end of the world. If you're playing as a civilization with a half-decent economy bonus, you should be able to keep your TCs running at all times. Around when we hit 33 or 34 population, I'd recommend grabbing a villager and making them your designated house builder. The villagers come out fast when you have 3 TCs pumping, so having one person building houses non-stop is a good idea. There's not much more to showcase other than a lot of farms going down, so I'll end this demo here. As I mentioned earlier, I crunched the numbers to investigate if it's worthwhile to buy food at the market. I think the best way to frame this is in terms of a race between 2 villagers, both trying to obtain 100 food as quickly as they can. Villager 1 heads to the mines, gathers 150 gold, and then sells this at the market to get 100 food. Fairly straightforward. Trying to gather the food directly is a bit more difficult. By the time we hit Castle Age, we have no natural food resources left on the map. The only way to gather food directly is from a farm, which requires 60 wood to build. So Villager 2 takes the approach of first gathering 60 wood, then building a farm, and then gathering 100 food from that farm. Have a think yourself and make a guess at who would win this race. It's a simple enough calculation given the relevant rates. 22.8 gold per minute for a gold miner, 28.2 wood per minute for a double bit axe wood chopper, 20.3 food per minute for a farmer, and 15 seconds to build a farm. When you do the calculations, we see that villager 1 wins by a comfortable margin, obtaining the food around 40 seconds quicker than villager 2. For anyone interested, the break-even point at the market is around 166 gold for 100 food. Once the price goes above this, villager 2 ends up being more efficient. So while buying food at the market is definitely not a sustainable long-term plan, doing it 3 or 4 times in early Castle Age can give you a minor efficiency advantage. To conclude this video, I've put up a build order summary on screen. You can take a screenshot of this or even print it out if you want to help guide you through the steps as you're practicing this build.